Hi there, I'm Richard Lewis, an esports journalist with about 10 years experience, and I'm guessing most of you guys will have heard the name by now if you're watching this video. Uh, the purposes of it just to basically reach out to the community. It's been a strange night. The reactions to the bans that were handed out to the XI by Power people and their associates for match fixing in the CEVO League have resonated to such a degree I didn't even think that would be the case. It really feels like it's a watershed moment in Counter-Strike as a whole, not just the history and the development of CSGO. And I only found out briefly. I've been real busy working on some other stuff. And I before I went to bed last night, there was a thread. It said, "Thank you, Richard Lewis," at the top of the CSGO subreddit. So this video is really, like I say, just to reach out to you guys and kind of reciprocate and say thank you for that level of appreciation. It was a real tough story to sort of work on. There was a lot of shit involved with it. For starters, I mean, just the sort of sheer work, because it was a collaborative effort. I had to work with CSGO Lounge. Everything was kind of dictated to ultimately by their timetable. I had to interview people in different time zones, so I was up late. I kind of lived in this room for the last 3 weeks or so, and while my girlfriend was getting up to go to work, I'd be sort of rolling into bed and then having to get up pretty early and start the process again. And there was obviously that did put a massive strain on the relationship. Where I can't say we're in a particularly great place. She didn't really understand why I was kind of pumping so much effort into it. Like, what could be so important? And there was the usual stuff you get. I mean, that you just get from coexisting in this scene anyway, which is the threats and PMs, PMs asking why I haven't killed myself, suggesting I could kill myself, threats of violence, watch your back kind of type stuff. I had my email hacked and my Skype hacked, I presume by some interested parties, let's put it that way, who probably wanted to know exactly what I had and how far along we were with the Valve decision. And I still don't know where that's going to go. I mean, there's probably an opportunity to dox me there. They can release my name and address in the public domain. There's an opportunity to get obtain my bank details or whatever. So there could be some attempt to scandalize me. I don't know what's going to come of that. I feel instinctively it was absolutely linked. The hacking occurred a few hours after I released the next part of the evidence about Derek and Cud and the chap called Joe who sold the skins on Derek's behalf. So it does feel kind of linked, but we'll see where that goes. Looking back on how the story was covered, I definitely had some regrets because I definitely jumped the gun. What I felt I had at the time, I felt was sufficient because I had the conversation, the log, which was verified as genuine, from Shazam saying the game was a throw. I had Shazam basically saying, "I will go on the record and tell you everything," in exchange for not being incriminated, which of course there was nothing to incriminate him into because he wasn't involved. And I had CSGO Lounge saying, "We'll look at it and we'll cooperate." With those three things, I felt confident that I published the screenshots, I published the chat logs, and we rustle some bushes and see what slithers out. And it was very strange because what we got was this, as you guys all know by now, this concerted effort to deny it. This this front that was presented, this unified front by a group of players who were absolutely adamant they had done nothing wrong, which in hindsight is really repellent, all things considered. Uh, and that's something I want to tell you guys in this video. Like behind the scenes, I was desperately trying to get these players to do the right thing. This wasn't a witch hunt. This wasn't. I want to throw these guys under the bus. I knew they were guilty, but there was an opportunity there. I think if you come out, when you're found, there's a reason in law of when you're found guilty of something. If you admit and you confess to it, there are benefits for doing that. There's an idea that by admitting that you've done something wrong and perhaps showing some remorse, we give you a reduced sentence because you're that one step closer to rehabilitation. Whereas to lie about it, to try and disguise it, to fight against it until the very end and make proving it all the harder, well, the penalties are always going to be harsher for that because that's what we want to discourage in a criminal system. And so it was here. And I reached out to Steele on 2, maybe 3 occasions. The most recently, just a few days ago, I came in. I'd been having a few beers, actually. It might have been the night I broke the story again. I think I was out celebrating. I did a job well done, if you like. That CS:GO lounge and and myself had been able to sort of tie it all together. I went out and had a few beers with a friend, and was kind of telling them all about it. And when I came back, I was like, I'll have one more attempt to appeal to Josh to do the right thing, and he still absolutely adamantly denied it. And I was like, look, at this point, Valve are going to find the skins. If you've received any skins, you're done. And he said, well, I didn't. He lied to me, and I gave him an opportunity way back, at the time as well, when I first got in touch with Derek and we were ascertaining the veracity of the text messages that had been sent by his ex-girlfriend. He just said, he shut down. He refused to speak to me on the phone or Skype. He didn't want to do it by voice. He basically said, I'm not going to tell you anything. And I was like, Derek, this is beyond incriminating at this point. It's obvious you are going down. Even if we can't at this juncture link it to the players, which we had, but even if we didn't have substantiating evidence, we've got you admitting to placing bets on fixed games. I had screenshots from him being involved in other fixed games and dodgy betting activity, and there was no way he was getting out of it. So it was like, well, look, you've got an opportunity now to do the right thing. You can just cop to it, confess, tell us how it all worked, and and you take the penalty, and maybe these guys over here get let off. He didn't want to do that. He said it was a witch hunt and a revenge crusade by an ex-girlfriend. So again, he had the opportunity there. Then I publicly asked Dazed and Casey Foster, just like, guys, like, take responsibility for this. If you come forward and say, we put our players up to it, we put them in a position they didn't want to be in. Sure, you guys go down, and you probably get the same penalties that got handed out yesterday, but your colleagues don't, your teammates don't. And think about guys like Swag and in all of this, and how he said, he didn't even make that much money from it. He didn't make the same portion of winnings as the other guys, which suggests to me he was reluctantly coerced. And that's a real shame because he's a super talent and a young guy, and I think was pushed into a difficult situation. I mean, we've all been in those situations throughout our lives where we're young, we're impressionable, we've got peer pressure around us, and we do the wrong thing. So again, I'm aghast that these guys wouldn't do the right thing for their supposed colleagues, their teammates. It's like we all go down together. I don't understand that mentality, because some people organised and initiated it, and other people were just along for the ride, and then other people were kind of forced and pushed into it. I mean, this is quite clear. You can see this. It's not a great leap. I'm not plucking things out of thin air. But I thought you guys needed to know that actually if I could have got us to a resolution where the guys just did even a season ban from SIVO, all I wanted to do was highlight that match fixing was real, it was going on, and people were effectively being defrauded from their skins in exchange for profits. That's all I wanted to expose. I wanted to create this honest environment. I had no idea the penalties would be this severe. I understand why they've been doled out. I understand why they're necessary. I'm not even saying I disagree with the penalties, but I'm pretty sure if they'd confessed to it back in August, they would have received much lighter sentences, if you like to use that word. And to place that into some context, why the penalty kind of almost has to be as harsh as it was, is because of that deception. Because match fixing is an act of deception in itself. It's an incredible deception, really. It's one of the worst deceptions, if not the worst, you can do in a sport. Perhaps worse than a doping or anything like that. Because what you do is you create the illusion that your team put all of its effort in, put its heart and soul into winning, and then it didn't. And if you're a fan of that team and you're disappointed, then you're saddened, but you're almost supportive. Nobody says, "Oh, well, you lost that game to those nobodies. Fuck you," and you stop supporting the team. Everybody stands by the team through thick and thin. When you identify with the team, you support them. That's why you're called a supporter. So it can be the good times when you're winning. It can be the bad times when you're losing. But you're there. I'm a Newcastle fan in football, so I know all too well about this. I used to remember being so angry when we used to finish second in the Premier League. And Christ, I'd do anything to go back to those days. But we had plenty of thin times. I didn't just say, right, that's it, fuck Newcastle. But that's because I believe they're trying. I believe there's an earnest attempt, even if it's mismanaged, even if it's stupid, even if the signings are bad, even if there's players that don't put the effort in. I always support that collective, that thing that I identify and attach the label of Newcastle United to. And so it is for the I Buy Power guys, or in fact, actually, this group of players. That it wasn't even the organisation. I Buy Power fans didn't stay with I Buy Power when they left. They followed the players. And that's why this deception, this match fixing is so sinister. It's so horrible, because you sell a lie to the people that care about your fortunes the most, ultimately, and the people that enable you to monetize what you do for a living. You effectively betray their trust. On the flip side of that, there's another team involved who didn't know. And they're thinking, hey, we just beat one of the best teams in North America. This is great. What we're doing is right. What we're doing works. But it doesn't. It was an illusion. It's a myth. You're wasting your time. It was bullshit. You got conned. And then they play the next game and they're scratching their heads thinking, what's going on? Maybe there's some internal conflict. Maybe the guy who dropped 20 against the team that's throwing, who then drops 6 against the team that isn't, maybe that guy gets kicked because they're like, you're too inconsistent. The ripples that this decision, that this, like I said, this deception has, it doesn't just end with, oh, it's a result, take the skins, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It doesn't end there. The scene is, an organism. Nothing exists within a vacuum. And obviously there's a complete lack of remorse. We're still waiting for apologies. You would have thought they knew the writing was on the wall. I wasn't playing around. I was telling these players. I was telling people. I told Hiko. On the day we broke the story again, I said this time it's bad. This time they're going to be banged to rights. And he said, well, I'll believe it when I see it. Nobody wanted to prepare for where we're at now. Nobody wanted to realize it was gonna, go as far as it did. They all thought they would skate again. They all thought they'd get away with it again. And here we are now. It's been about, it's the day after the announcement, and we've only had one apology from one player. We've had a weird, vague threat from Dazed that he's gonna, prove that he fixed these games. And I imagine he's going to incriminate more people. I mean, I might be tempted to do so if I was him as well. Um, why should he be the poster boy for match fixing when we know other people are involved and we know other people have done it? Probably people that we have no idea have got away with it. But, still no apology. The first time you pop your head up after this, it should have just been to say, look, guys, we're sorry. We got scared. We tunneled in. We thought we could ride it out. We realised it was a bad decision. I don't know, something. The only guy who did it was Swag so far. And I guess this is the other thing I wanted to say. These are the minority. So I'm addressing the minority right now. I totally appreciate that. But to the fans out there who are still supporting these players, people still attacking me and all, and all this other stuff, saying, wow, like you've ruined their careers. How dare you? Look, I totally get it. We all have players that we look up to and that we idolize in any sport. We all, we all want these people to be able to entertain us, to excite us, to thrill us. We love watching them play. We want to emulate them. All of these things. That's how it operates. But these players, they don't give a fuck about you. They do not care about you. You are the last person they care about, and that is evidenced by their behavior. You are nothing to them. Literally nothing. I mean, I can't think of another way to express it in any sort of more basic terms. The fans that supported them through thick and thin, the fans that basically monetize the organization, that sponsors them and sends them to events, the fans that give them the media presence, the fans that subscribe to them on Twitch and watch their stream, the fans that pay for lessons from them, the fans that bought their guides from Netcode or paid a subscription to get access to those guides, I should say. All of those people were not enough. That collective validation from all of you was not enough to get them to behave honestly. They didn't feel any obligation to you whatsoever. And you're still out there fighting for them. It's insane. You should be the most angry people right now. For people who aren't fans of them are indifferent. I guess you wake up and you look at it and you go, well, they threw a game in a small American league. They conspired to do it. They maybe would have done it again in the future. But ultimately, these guys are irrelevant now. And that's it. And hip hip hooray, we've removed some match fixers. And everyone moves on. But for you guys, for the fans, for the North American fans, for the people that have followed these guys, for years, you're the guys who should be the most angry. Because you're the guys who've lost out. And you're the guys who've been, ultimately, betrayed by people you've enabled to have careers. So, and on that note, I think it's fair to say as well, a lot of people have said, oh my God, these careers have been ended, North American scene's in ruins. It's not true. If there's one thing I know about Counter-Strike, and again, I have a lot of experience in this area, is that when players go, and there's always a replacement. In fact, a lot of the time, people that are at the top, it's almost like they kind of suppress some of the talent coming through. I mean, this is a well-documented phenomenon that you have to get into the clique to basically be promoted, and no one really wants to develop raw talent or take a chance on, young players. Well, we've seen actually, like for example with Shroud, that this actually can pay off. And I know there's so many good, not established yet, and up and coming North American Counter-Strike players that would do anything for an opportunity. Well, now they're going to get that opportunity because there's some spaces at the top for them, and as everyone moves to fill that gap, people move upwards. That's what's going to happen here. This is not the end of North American Counter-Strike. It's a new era. It's a new beginning. And I think that's a good thing. It would have been better if it didn't happen like this. We would have all loved a ticker tape parade for Dazed and Steel and thanks for everything you've contributed, because these guys have made some solid and positive contributions to the North American scene. You can argue the Netcode Guides project changed the North American landscape in a way that few things have, especially post CGS. So you know, it's again, their legacy will be tainted by this, but it wasn't all bad. It wasn't entirely bad, but we're not going to get that now. That glorified retirement is gone. No one's going to care. They're going to be scandalized. That's just the nature of the beast. But you know, in a way, it's you know, it's good because there is some good that's going to come of it. We might not be able to see it right now, but more players are going to come through and get an opportunity as a result of this, be it directly or indirectly. A lot of people asked, you know, did I have a vendetta against North Americans because I'm a European or whatever? Obviously, that's nonsense. That's not how I operate. In fact, any old school European Counter Strike fan will always have this heightened level of respect and fanboyism towards North America. You know, a lot of Europeans looked at North American players and wanted to be like those players. When we used to ignore the European players we had, there was something about Americans, you know, and I'm sure vice versa. There was a mystique there, you know. We didn't often get to play each other, you know. That's just how the scene worked. So I don't hate the North American scene. I've done commentary for ESEA for a few seasons. I used to stay up and do the North American games at 3 a.m. You know, North American Counter Strike's just as important to me as any other form of Counter Strike. You know, I love Counter Strike. Um, so yeah, there are some teams, namely Alson and My Revenge, that have admitted to fixing. I think tournament organisers now should impose some sort of penalty on them. It can't be as severe as the one imposed on the North Americans, and here's to why. You can probably guess why. I've pretty much laid it out for you. But you know, they were involved in a match-fixing ring that was designed to maximise profit. They lied about it. They tried to deceive people. There's actually an argument that there's games that we don't know about where there was also throws. I don't believe this was a one-off isolated incident. I'm sure we'll find out more about that in a few days. Alston and My Revenge, we know they threw one game. We know that they were involved in very stupid throws, and as soon as it was brought to light, they admitted what they did. They apologized. They got dumped by their organizations. You know what? Ban them for, you know, a season each or a year. You know, there has to be a ban. We've got to be consistent here, but consistency isn't applying the same punishment for everybody that does something, even if, you know, it's like you fix one game, you know, you get banned for life. You fix a bunch of games and you involve the match fixing ring and you lie about it and you hide it and you deceive and you get banned, you know, for the same amount of time. It can't work like that. Consistency is saying we're going to punish anybody that engages in this activity, but there can be a sliding scale for the punishment. We've got precedent. It's a landmark. But, you know, we need to retroactively apply something to them in the interests of fairness, I believe. Another question that got brought up a lot was about, you know, the governing body. Do we need a governing body? And, you know, does this prove we need a governing body? Well, actually, if anything, it proves that maybe we don't need a governing body. And I don't know how one organisation or one group of people could come together and be a governing body for Counter-Strike. But here's what I do know. That a cooperative of tournament organisers, because behind the scenes, again, just for total disclosure with you guys, I reached out to, you know, ESEA, I think, DreamHack, MLG, obviously ESL. I tried to reach out to Sevo. They were less interested for some reason. Face It. You know, all of these people were, you know, active. They were active. They wanted to know. They were like, Richard, what evidence you got? Show us it. Bam. Showed them everything that I had, even stuff we didn't put out in the public domain. And they were like, right, okay, have you sent this to Valve? I was like, yeah, absolutely. They're like, okay, well, we'll mention it to them. And then Valve got involved, and that was great because we all needed that. We needed it. I needed it. You know, what I'd done effectively was roll this massive boulder up a hill, and I'd got it just to the top, but only Valve could push it down over the other side. If Valve said, you know, we're not going to look at this, the boulder rolls back, and you know, eventually we're back to square one. And also by Valve getting involved and getting us that concrete evidence, confirming what we knew to be true, and just giving us the proof, it validates the rights for the tournament organisers to make decisions about their tournaments. You know, they're empowered by Valve effectively to do what they've done, and that's come out and ban them from all of their events. So I think governing body, you know, maybe we don't need to call it that. Maybe it doesn't need to have its own name. Maybe we don't need to have employees or appoint people or whatever. But we now see that a cooperative of all the tournament organizers, of guys like Faceit, of guys like DreamHack, of guys like ESL and MLG and everyone else getting around a table, and journalists, you know, like myself, presenting information and having a channel with which we can reach out to people, and then they feed that information up to Valve, and then we've got CSGO Lounge coming in if it's a match fixing thing. Having the ability to get round that table and talk about it together, that's as much of a governing body as we need. And we've proven that. We've proven that in the last 24 hours, that actually we've got the people here who care. We've got the people who've got the means and the knowledge and are adult enough to govern this game, free from any bias, free from any unprofessional behaviour. They're there already. All we need to do is just keep talking to each other, and we're going to be fine. You know, I think this is like say, a great day for a lot of reasons. And on that note, because I always have a tendency to waffle on a little bit too much, the person that there's lots of people obviously I need to thank. I thanked a lot of them on the Daily Dot show, the Loadout, just the other day. And, that goes to Ashley LaBeouf, aka Black Lotus, the ex-girlfriend of Derek, Shazam, for his brave testimony. Or again, the nonsense about him needing to be punished, that's just your prejudice. That's because you don't like his personality. It's ridiculous. There is not one shred of evidence I've seen that links him to any match fixing. So stop with that witch hunt. Matthew Luke, the young journalist who originally brought it up. Obviously CSGO Lounge, in particular Courtney Timpson, who really worked tirelessly with me on those late nights to go over betting patterns, looking at accounts, looking at alts, looking at inventories. Tireless work, boring work, and ultimately thankless work, because, had none of this happened, I doubt he's getting a pat on the back from me or anyone else for that matter. But CSGO Lounge as a whole, definitely deserve a lot of credit. I think they're finally ready to wield the responsibility they hold within the Counter-Strike scene, and I think that's great news. But ultimately, the people we need to thank is Valve. All the time there's threads up, I see them, they don't care about the game. All they care about is maximizing profit and skins and money. Now, I've met Valve. I've met Valve employees. I've had this, I don't know how to describe it, because love-hate's wrong. But they've read my work for a number of years. They've told me this. They've always been super nice to me, even when I'm like, fuck this game, fuck this community, I'm out, I can't do it anymore, it's just not worth it. Valve are always saying to me, it's great, hey, it's great to see you involved again. And it's the little things, they didn't have to come up to me when I did a major and give me some limited edition t-shirts and thank me and, and make me welcome and say they hope I do some more. They don't have to do any of that. They're Valve. They're one of the most successful companies in existence. They definitely don't need to even talk to me or address me, but they do. And they do that because they care, and they care about people who make a contribution. And it would have been the easiest thing in the world for them to ignore this. Literally, it would have been, you can't underestimate just how it would have been. Just like, look, we don't want to comment on this. This is a hornet's nest. It's a hot potato. They could have walked away from it. They could have ignored it, but they didn't. And you know why they didn't? Because they want their game to be this level playing field where competitive integrity actually matters. They're never going to go full riot on the situation. They're never going to be obsessed with controlling every little facet of it, but they knew this was important. They took the evidence, they ran with it, they concluded that the right thing to do was to ban these players, and they did it in a timely fashion as well. They didn't go gung-ho and ruin MLG with a big shadow over the whole tournament. They handled it brilliantly, and we should all be super grateful. And hopefully people start to realize that Valve do care about Counter-Strike, CS:GO as an esport. I hope people realize that, because they maybe they always didn't do that. Maybe there was a time when they didn't care about the esports side of things. It's a very difficult community to engage in when all you want to do is make great games, because we've got so many specific requirements and needs. We're very vociferous. We're a passionate community. We don't adapt well to change. Valve's all about change and the evolution of ideas. It's been a fractious relationship, to put it mildly, but there can be no doubt now that they care about our game, and they care about developing as an esport. The only benefit we receive from this decision is the competitive community. So, massive praise to them for what they did, and hopefully we all, if there's any Valve doubters, Valve haters, dislike that word, but whatever. If there's any of you guys out there, perhaps this makes you think a little bit differently about them, because you owe them a huge debt of thanks. They've helped clean up our game and give us all precedent to make sure things like this don't happen in the future. So anyway, look, thanks a lot for listening to this video. Again, rambled on. Sorry, that's me. But to the people who made the posts, and I got hundreds of messages, I'm still reading through some of them on Twitter and Reddit, and my Skype blew up. To all of you guys, seriously, thank you. You didn't have to, praise me at all, and yet you did. I'm just doing my job. I'll be writing another story today, and it's just back to the office for me. But it means a lot that you recognize, what I do for you guys. It's very humbling. So, all the best, and here's to a nice, clean 2015 in Counter-Strike Global Offensive.